What's good, YouTube? It's me, Squid, back in another Squideo. Let's go over some of these side deck cards that I think are absolutely imperative, or at the very least should be considered for this format as it is right now, pre-Agov. Diving in, the BYSTIALS. These cards are absolutely nuts. Now, I like to put it into perspective like this. Okay, so before, when the BYSTIALS came out, originally it was tier limits, tier 0 format, and they were absolutely amazing staples in basically every deck, including tier limits, right? But then a Rise Heart was released, and that kind of messed it up because BYSTIALS all of a sudden were no longer as good because the graveyard was dying and there were not a lot of prevalent light and dark decks, especially when a Rise Heart was banishing everything. So it kind of created like a weird scenario where the cards seemed a lot worse than they were. But they were obviously broken in the right deck like Dragon Link, where they were a part of the engine or branded. But now that the Rise Heart has officially been banned and BYSTIALS are basically at full power, save for Magnemite at 1, which should have always happened, I think these cards are absolutely amazing just as value cards. Being able to search for a Magnemite off of Lubellion if you have room to play it, or at the very least playing Magnemite and probably Druid Worm is crazy. Like, the value that you get out of these cards is nuts. Druid Worm itself allows you to threaten a board, and there happen to be a lot of dark monsters climbing back into Resurgence in the metagame. We have, of course, against Unchained, the Yama being a dark in the graveyard. Like, a lot of people are going to say, oh, if the Unchained player is good, they're going to play around your BYSTIALS. But that doesn't matter, because as long as you have a way to out the High King Caesar, you're still going to be able to grind with your BYSTIALS, especially into a board that has Yama in the grave. So I honestly think they're decently good still as is. I don't think there's any excuse to not really run these right now in the side deck. Obviously, there are also other dark decks that are making Resurgence, like Tier Limits. Tier Limits are very, very, very powerful, and now that a Rise Heart, their worst matchup, is gone from the format, I think this deck is absolutely tier 1. It's just so crazy that the field spell is still at 3. They also have multiple other engines, like the Cashier engine using Wraithos and Fenrir's. And the deck is just very, very, very powerful when the Millers and the Shufflers are still in the game. So I think that running BYSTIALS are an absolute no-brainer right now in the format. It just hits so much. There will even be rogue players playing Dark World decks or decks that you never really wanted to see and we're not expecting to see. So the BYSTIALS would definitely help you there. Putting some bodies on board that you can easily synchro away with or to link away with and then trigger the effect of Druid Worm is also so powerful. So in my opinion, you should definitely be running them. Next card is also a dragon, but Phantasmay. I love this card. This card says you can fix your hand for essentially free. You get a +1, you get a free 2400 body that is also a walking targeting negate by discarding a card. Now, the only caveat to this card is, unfortunately, it doesn't do anything to your opponent's board on its own, right? So you do have to pair it with other cards, whether that be other hand traps like Nibiru, or cards like BYSTIALS, or anything that allows you to protect yourself after Phantasmay resolves. Because if you're only playing Phantasmay as itself, then it doesn't do enough. We have to be able to fix our hand and draw into power cards that allow us to control the game going second. So I think this card is especially utility because a lot of decks are playing links. We have the Unchained deck, which is playing a lot of links. We have Salamangreat, which is playing links because that'll just win to 3. Everyone's going to try playing their pet deck again. There are even some random decks that are still prevalent in the metagame. I'm sure Dragon Links will stick around, at least as a tier 2 deck, or maybe even higher. There will be random Aerosephame Jasmine's being summoned in Rika decks. There are also even the Scareclaw Manadium deck, like they're summoning Scareclaw Lightheart. You can still be able to draw into Nib or power cards like Droll. So having the option to use this against a variety of matchups in a diverse format, I think is really, really useful. So I definitely think Phantasmay is a very good card in the side deck right now at 2 or 3 copies. Another card is Dimensional Barrier. This one's a no-brainer, but I see a lot of people starting to drop this card again in favor of things like Anti-Spot Fragrance because they are a little better against decks like Unchained. But I think people are starting to play fusion-based strategies again, especially branded and tier limits. Now that Rise Heart's gone, I see a lot of tier limits decks being very popular, and Dimensional Barrier is very effective against this deck as well as branded. And on top of that, you can hit random decks like Sword Soul that are just playing the synchro decks and just no links, right? So it just does a lot, I think, in a blind metagame, and of course being very effective against Purely is a no-brainer, being able to stop them from going off into their link plays. I just think Dimensional Barrier is such an auto-win card right now that needs to be banned eventually, sooner or later, but that's another topic for discussion. Right now, I just think Dimensional Barrier is an absolute necessity in going first options for any deck. It's just so wide of a net, and it just does so much for what it is as a one card that I think it's very, very impactful and should be played. Cosmic Cyclone. This card is very good going first and second. Going first, you can hit things like against the Unchained, the trap that they're trying to target to pop. You can also hit a plethora of other things in the metagame, even against decks like Tearlaments, being able to snipe their planets, being able to snipe the Kashkira planets as well. There are random decks like Floanderies that are still relying off of their field spells to start their engine sometimes. And then going second, we can also snipe the same things. Against Tearlaments, you can hit Soliek. Against Flu, you can hit the Dreaming Town in the standby phase and pray that they did not also open either Shifter or Featherstorm. Against Salamangreat even, you can snipe the trap cards that they have sometimes. So it always has some value, I think, as a card that can be good going first or second. And in today's day and age for Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! You definitely want cards that are good going first and second in your main and side deck. So Cosmic Cyclone is definitely the type of card that fits that bill for me. So I would definitely recommend siding this card. I know everyone already is, but for those of you guys that are siding Lightning Storm instead, I would definitely consider siding Cosmic Cyclone in favor. Next card is Ultimate Slayer. This card was sort of hyped up, I know, by a lot of the players and Yu-Gi tubers. It just does a lot in a wide metagame, and I feel like this current metagame is very, very wide. There are a lot of diverse decks, and when Ultimate Slayer says you can send a Link, a Fusion, an XYZ, or a Synchro, you have a lot of options. We have, in the Link form, obviously being able to send the Evil Twins Trouble Sunny is very, very good. You could also play Bucephalus if you're already playing a deck with Garura in the extra deck, because Bucephalus can be sent, and then that will foolish the Garura, allowing us to draw a card. But the thing I like about the Trouble Sunny is that it's a non-targeting disruption, so if you are playing against Unchained and they have the Unchained Soul of Rage as well as the High King Caesar on board, we can get rid of the Rage by bouncing it and then use the effect of Trouble Sunny to out the Caesar, so it's a lot more useful, I think, in a metagame where there are a lot more floodgate monsters and trap cards that we have to actually deal with. So that's why I really, really like that. Against the other Link decks, being able to send Trouble Sunny is really useful. You're able to bounce the Hieratic Seal, not letting them trigger the effect to summon a Magnamut from the deck. You're able to bounce the Sunlight Wolf. It doesn't destroy, so it gets past the mechanic in the graveyard of the Sunlight Wolf Balinks, the Salamangreat rather, and then being able to banish it to get rid of a floodgate on the board is just so, so good in my opinion. If you are playing against a deck that only turtles out with an XYZ, you can still send Meteorologic Aggregator. So even against a deck like Purely, you could potentially try and get rid of a Beauty or something, and then use Meteorologic Aggregator to either negate the field spell or to negate the effect of the My Friend, because it's going to be on a new chain, right? I guess it would negate specifically the effect of the field spell, because that one's mandatory, but My Friend would be chainlink 2 if return player, because where Meteorologic would be chainlink 1. But it has a lot of options. I mean, being able to send Entis against something like a Rukalos is obviously very good as well, and then triggering the effect to pop the face down Suliak. So it's always getting like a 2-for-1 advantage, in my opinion, and I just love how cards do that. The trade-off is you have to have a deck that has enough extra deck space, and not a lot of decks have that option, so you kind of have to determine whether or not your deck can handle playing a random assortment of extra deck monsters, specifically tuned to the tune of Ultimate Slayer. Forbidden Droplet is the next one I want to talk about. This card was seeing zero play when Arise Heart was legal because it has to send to the graveyard at the cost. But now that that's gone, we can easily send things to the graveyard again, and it's very, very good when paired with monsters that can be used in the graveyard or spell cards that you can chain to. So if we're playing a deck that has a lot of spell extenders, you know, even activating something like a Terraforming and then chaining the Droplet, sending a Terraforming another monster gets so much value. But the biggest thing about Droplet, I think, as a card is the fact that it's good going first and second. We already have powerful cards like Dark Ruler No More that are extremely good going second, but going first, they have zero utility at all. And when that card is an extra negate in the form of a quick play, it could get a lot more value and allow us to main deck it, right? Like, we wouldn't want to main deck Dark Ruler in the deck right now because it's not good going first. And going second, it's really, really good, so we would side it. But having the option to have a Droplet in the main deck going first and second is just so, so clean. And the fact that it's a quick play spell card makes me absolutely love this card. I definitely recommend that you guys add this card in if you haven't already. Give it a test. And then the icing on top is the having the attack, so you can swing over a big monster or you can deal a lot of damage to win in time. And the last couple of cards to talk about is, people already know about this, but obviously Triple Tactics Thrust and Triple Tactics Talent, but more specifically Thrust, because you can set a bunch of powerful trap cards on your turn going first, like the Barrier as well, so that's really, really useful. And then going second, you can dig for any utility card that you want. So being able to dig for like a Terraforming to search for Engine, or being able to dig for something like an Ultimate Slayer, being able to dig for Tactics to draw cards, or a Harpy's Feather Duster to clear the board. It just has so much utility that I'm sure this card will be hit on the ban list eventually in some way, shape, or form. It's just very, very good and seems to age very well as the game progresses. So I definitely think that if you guys have the space to main deck or side deck these cards, I would definitely recommend that. It just has so much utility right now, and the fact that you can dig for engine as well is just a auto no-brainer that you would slot it in. So that's about all I had for this video. If you guys have any other cards that were missing from this list that you think should be imperative in the side deck or potentially main deck for this format pre-Agov as of now, let me know in the comments below, because I'm sure I'm missing something. There are a lot of cards that I haven't tested yet, so yeah, let me know. And other than that, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.